Hello, my name is Elena Daguns. I'm making this video record to tell about the effectiveness of the spiritual technologies of Grigory Grabovoi. Now I want to talk about one of my results in the application of such technologies through own consciousness, according to the teachings of Grigory Grabovoi. This applies to the results of control in the event area. This happened on March 29, 2010. Maybe somebody remembers that on this day, 2 terrorist attacks were committed in the Moscow underground. First one at the Lubyanka station and after a while at the Park Kultury station. It was Monday. I was on my way to work and ended up at the Park Kultury station at 8:40 a.m., just at the moment when the terrorist attack took place there. This terrible event made me look at everything, at the fact how we live, from a different angle. People who were far from the teachings of Grigory Grabovoi reacted to my miraculous rescue with words, "You were born in a shirt, with a silver spoon in your mouth, you were lucky," and so on. But I know that I was saved by the technology of control through my consciousness, which I had been using in the subway for half an hour without pause before the explosion took place. That is, just before the explosion. I'll tell everything in order. First of all, I want to tell about my state in the early morning of March 29, 6:30 a.m. I'm going to work at the university for a 9-hour lecture and I don't understand what is happening to me. Everything is falling out of my hands and I really don't want to go anywhere. Then at that moment I didn't connect this unusual state of mind with something abnormal in the nearest future, just tracked that something was wrong with me. Grigory Petrovich has a lecture called 3 Positions of Consciousness Structuring, where he says that our physical body always controls and that we should listen to our unusual states and do control in advance. But then I didn't analyze this state of mind. At the interchange station, Biblioteka Lenina, about 8 a.m. when I got there was accumulated a huge amount of people. Another 15 minutes there were no trains. For those who don't know, I will say that during rush hours, the distance between trains in the Moscow metro is usually 30 seconds. Therefore, 15 minutes is a very long break. You can imagine how many people were there. By that time, the explosion on the station Lubyanka had already occurred. It was at 7:56. But the passengers were not told about it. On the radio they announced that for technical reasons, the time between the departures of trains increased and advised to go by road. But since I didn't know how to get to the university, MSU, I was working there at that time, how to get there by land transport from the Lenin Library, I decided to stay in the metro and to work with control technologies of Grigory Grabovoi to arrive on time. When the train finally arrived, I had to miss it because it was awfully crowded. All this time, while I was standing on the platform waiting for the train, and later when I managed to take the next train, I was working through my consciousness using the technologies of Grigory Grabovoi. The inner voice didn't let me stop for a minute to have a break, to have a rest. I worked on all methods that were known to me by that time for many times, repeating them again and again. We were going to the station Park Culture 20 minutes instead of 5 minutes. The train stopped in the tunnel all the time. I realized that I was very late for classes at the university and continued to work on the methods of events control according to the teachings of Grigory Grabovoi. I set a goal to optimize events for myself and the people around me so that everyone would arrive at his destination on time, including me, and to eliminate technical problems. We arrived at the station Park Culture by 8:40 a.m. The train stopped at the station, and in a moment there occurred an explosion. There were two claps, not very loud but terrible. After them the space immediately changed. Everything was covered with smoke and stench. Small particles flew in the air of the enclosed space. It became difficult to breathe. In the distance of around 15 meters from me, there lay people on the platform. At that moment, I didn't realize that this was a terrorist attack. I had a question in my head. Why don't they get up? People began heading for the exit of the subway, and me too with everyone. Going up the stairs at the station, I called on my mobile phone. I don't know how I managed to get through because immediately after the explosion, the mobile connection was disconnected. But nevertheless, I managed to get through to Marina, the student of Grigory Grabovoi and our colleague, and asked for help with the control. It was a huge number of people, but nevertheless there was no panic. People helped each other, supported each other, immediately parted and formed a corridor when from behind somebody asked the way to carry the wounded. Next to me there was a woman who told me that she was hit in the back and thrown by the blast wave. I looked at her back. She was wearing a tweed coat, and the coat on the back was covered in small burnt pellets. We walked together for a while, then the crowd separated us. When I went out on the street and came to the edge of the sidewalk by the road, right in front of me, 2 steps away, a minibus stopped, and I read on its sign that it was going to the university. I didn't wait a second for the transport. I arrived at class 20 minutes late. That is, I entered the class at 9:20. For Moscow distances and taking into account force majeure, this is very fast. My control worked out as follows. First of all, I didn't get caught in the middle of the explosion. Secondly, people who were in the radius of 10 meters from me were not injured. That is, those who were next to me, they didn't suffer. Third point. What's also important, at Park Culture there was no panic. Later, from the media, I learned that in the Lubyanka station there was panic and a crash jam, and many people suffered from it too. And on the station Park Culture, people made way for each other, helped each other, immediately parted and formed a corridor when from behind somebody asked the way to carry the wounded. Fourth, from the media later, I learned that on the station Park Culture there were killed people and injured people almost 2 times less than on the station Lubyanka. And the power of explosion was almost 2 times less. So I was only 20 minutes late for the classes. This is the 5th point. It must be taken into account that I was going to work from unfamiliar place. I had to get out of the subway at the station University, but because of the explosion I got out of the subway at the station Park Cultura. Immediately the right bus turned up, which drove me straight to work. Here I want to also say that no one is immune from falling into some critical situation for different reasons. Everyone may have his own ones, but owning those technologies that are brought to the mankind by Grigory Grabovoi, we stay alive, unharmed, and in varying degrees are able to assist the people who occurred to be next to us. And this event, this terrible event which I got in, helped me to realize what is important in life and what is not. Before that, I was always afraid to be late for work, to violate the established order. That's why I never went to work by road, though I lived 20 minutes drive from the university. Was always afraid in the morning to hit traffic and went to work by subway using circuitous road. After this explosion, everything in my head as if fell into place. The most important thing in life is protect life, to save oneself and all the people from the hatred, aggression, fear and violence, to promote love and technology of salvation to all people, and to come on time to work, say, or pass take exams. It's secondary, it's not the main thing. This is important, of course, but it's not the main thing. The main thing now to save life on our planet, save the people, and disseminate the technology of salvation, anti-terrorist technology around the world, so that they are used by as many people as possible. Then the number of destructive events on Earth will begin to decrease. Thank you for your attention.